Hello and good evening. The nation was in rapture today celebrating the landmark 75th Independence Day. Prime Minister Narendra Modi unfurled the tricolour at the Red Fort with the first time ever shower of flower petals by helicopters flying overhead, and then made a series of announcements that presented a vision for the next 25 years building up to the 100th Independence Day. We'll be talking about that on Newsnight tonight. I'm Gautam Roy. And we'll also be talking about the fall of Kabul and the uncertain future the people of Afghanistan face with the Taliban coming back to control in the war-torn country. But first, our headlines. India celebrates its 75th Independence Day in grand fashion. The PM unfurls the national tricolour from the ramparts of the Red Fort, remembers freedom fighters and martyrs, makes key announcements in his address to the nation. The President hosts the traditional at-home reception at Rashtrapati Bhavan. The PM presents his vision for the next 25 years for the country from the ramparts of the Red Fort. Says it marks the Amrit period of creation of a new India. The fulfillment of our resolve will take us to the 100th year of our independence. Urges the nation to work hard with complete dedication and determination, adds the mantra of Sabka Prayas to Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas and Sabka Vishwas. The PM announces soon to be launched National Infrastructure Master Plan Gati Shakti worth 100 lakh crore rupees. Says it will generate employment opportunities for lakhs of youth. Doors of Sainik schools will open up for daughters. Also announces 75 Vande Bharat trains in 75 weeks and launches the National Hydrogen Mission to make India energy self-reliant. The PM also terms terrorism and expansionism as major challenges. Says the government is leaving no stone unturned to strengthen the armed forces. Mentions a transforming Jammu and Kashmir, where preparations are being made for holding of assembly elections in the coming days. Remembers those who lost their lives to COVID pandemic. Heaps praise on Corona warriors. Mi-17 choppers carry out a flypast at the Red Fort as part of the 75th Independence Day celebrations and shower of flower petals. India's Tokyo Olympic Games contingent with players and coaches become part of the main event. The PM gets the sportspersons a rousing ovation. Says they not only won hearts but also inspired India's young generation. The nation's 75th Independence Day is also celebrated with pomp and festivity abroad. The tricolour flies high at Indian missions in capitals of foreign countries. Congratulatory and salutary messages pour in from leaders across the world. Several skyscrapers get bathed in India's national colours in cities across the world. And the Taliban claims Kabul enters the capital city of Afghanistan. President Ashraf Ghani leaves Kabul for Tajikistan as Taliban breaches the last defense lines to enter Kabul without much resistance. Uncertainty prevails over what shape and form will the next government take in the war-torn country and how it will rule. US and other nations begin evacuating their assembly staff. And the US defends its move to withdraw troops from the war-torn country. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the Joe Biden administration inherited a deadline negotiated by the previous administration. Says that the inherent inability of Afghan security forces to defend their positions has played a very powerful role in the Taliban's takeover. Well, first up, it's been a glorious 75th Independence Day for India, where the people have come together to celebrate it with pride, patriotism and renewed hope for the future. The day's main event unfolded at the iconic Red Fort, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi unfurled the national tricolour in the presence of top leaders, envoys and officials. The PM not only recalled achievements of recent years apart from the sacrifices of the freedom fighters and martyrs, but also the challenges posed by COVID and other issues, but also made a series of announcements in his 88-minute address, which lit the way, the path for New India.
India's 75th Independence Day, celebrated with patriotic fervour and a sense of pride nationwide. The Red Fort in the national capital took centre stage. But before heading there, Prime Minister Narendra Modi first went to Rajghat and paid homage to the father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi.
Marking time.
At the Red Fort, the PM also inspected a guard of honour. And then unfurled the national tricolour from the ramparts of the Red Fort. Flower petals rained down from the skies for the first time ever after the unfurling of the tricolour at Red Fort.
Petals of marigold and rose, adding their beautiful scent and colour, and blessings, of course.
In keeping with this practice of wearing a turban every Independence Day, the Prime Minister also sported a kurta pajama and a jacket. He began his around 88-minute-long address by bowing to all martyrs who sacrificed their lives for India's freedom.
अपने सभी स्वतंत्र सेनानियों को राष्ट्र रक्षा में अपने आप को दिन रात खपाने वाले, आहुत करने वाले वीर वीरांगनाओं को आज देश नमन कर रहा है.
While acknowledging challenges like COVID, the Prime Minister also looked ahead to the next 25 years of the nation's journey in his speech. He announced the National Master Plan of Prime Minister Gati Shakti, worth more than 100 lakh crore rupees for infrastructure construction. The National Hydrogen Mission to make the country energy self-reliant, running 75 Vande Bharat trains in the next 75 weeks and opening doors of all Sainik schools to girls.
यही समय है, सही समय है, भारत का अनमोल समय है, असंख्य भुजाओं की शक्ति है, असंख्य भुजाओं की शक्ति है, हर तरफ देश की भक्ति है, असंख्य भुजाओं की शक्ति है, हर तरफ देश की भक्ति है. तुम उठो तिरंगा लहरा दो, तुम उठो तिरंगा लहरा दो, भारत के भाग्य को फहरा दो.
The 75th Independence Day celebration saw top ministers, leaders of different political parties, foreign envoys and top officials in attendance. The presence of members of India's contingent for the Tokyo Olympics at the Prime Minister's invitation was a standout attraction. The Prime Minister not only got them a standing ovation from all those gathered, but also praised them wholeheartedly in his address.
करके उनका सम्मान करे. भारत के खेलों का सम्मान, भारत की युवा पीढ़ी का सम्मान. एथलीट्स ने विशेष तौर पर हम ये गर्व कर सकते हैं कि उन्होंने हमारा दिल ही नहीं जीता है, लेकिन उन्होंने आने वाली पीढ़ियों को भी, भारत की युवा पीढ़ी को प्रेरित करने का बहुत बड़ा काम किया है।
After the Prime Minister finished his address, he also went amidst the sportspersons and cadets while observing all COVID protocols. President Ramnath Kovind also paid homage on the country's 75th Independence Day to martyred soldiers at the National War Memorial, which stands tribute to all those who made the supreme sacrifice for the nation in the battlefield after independence. Later, the President also played host at the Rashtrapati Bhavan during the at-home reception. Bureau Report, DD India.
And Prime Minister Modi also laid down the blueprint for what the country needs to do in the next 25 years to reach the exalted position it envisions for itself. A period he defined as Amrit Kal, at the end of which the nation will be completely transformed, from cities to villages with modern infrastructure, facilities and liberties. He also gave a new mantra to the people to make it all happen. He added Sabka Prayas, that is everyone's effort, to Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas and Sabka Vishwas.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi, while addressing from the ramparts of the Red Fort, defined the vision for India for the next 25 years. He said, India has to march ahead with new pledges for the next 25 years. He said, the fulfillment of our resolutions in this Amrit period will take us to the 100th anniversary of Indian independence with pride.
अमृत काल का लक्ष्य है भारत और भारत के नागरिकों के लिए समृद्धि के नए शिखरों का आरोहण। अमृत काल का लक्ष्य है एक ऐसे भारत का निर्माण जहां सुविधाओं का स्तर गांव और शहर को बांटने वाला न हो। अमृत काल का लक्ष्य है एक ऐसे भारत का निर्माण जहां नागरिकों के जीवन में सरकार बेवजह दखल ना दे। अमृत काल का लक्ष्य है एक ऐसे भारत का निर्माण जहां दुनिया का हर आधुनिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर हो।
Prime Minister said that millions of countrymen have resolution, but the resolution is incomplete until it is accompanied with hard work and valor. He coined a new phrase in the popular slogan and termed it as Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas and Sabka Prayas to signify collective efforts required by all to achieve shared goals.
हमारे देश को भी बदलना होगा और हमें एक नागरिक के नाते अपने आप को भी बदलना ही होगा। बदलते हुए युग के अनुकूल हमें भी अपने आप को ढालना होगा। लाल किले की प्राचीर से आह्वान कर रहा हूं, सबका साथ, सबका विकास, सबका विश्वास और अब सबका प्रयास हमारे हर लक्ष्यों की प्राप्ति के लिए बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है।
Defining Amrit Kal, Prime Minister said that the goal of Amrit Kal is to build an India where the government does not interfere unnecessarily in the lives of citizens.
100% गांवों में सड़कें हो, 100% परिवारों के बैंक अकाउंट हो, 100% लाभार्थी को आयुष्मान भारत का कार्ड हो, 100% पात्र व्यक्तियों को उज्ज्वला योजना और गैस कनेक्शन हो।
Prime Minister Modi said that political will is needed for major reforms, and today the world is seeing that there is no dearth of political will in India.
आज मैं जो संकल्प रूप में बोल रहा हूं वो 25 साल के बाद जो भी ध्वजारोहण करते होंगे वे सिद्धि के रूप में बोलेंगे। देश सिद्धि के रूप में उसका गौरव गान करता होगा। जो आज देश के युवा हैं वो उस समय भी देखेंगे कि देश ने कैसे ये कमाल करके दिखाया है। 21वीं सदी में भारत के सपनों और आकांक्षाओं को पूरा करने से कोई भी बाधा अब हमें रोक नहीं सकती।
PM also mentioned various schemes initiated by the centre that have benefit of the farmers at the core. PM urged for taking forward with the goal of ensuring that every citizen is connected with the government's transformative schemes. He said, in the last few years, government has provided roads and electricity to the villages, and now these villages have been strengthened with optical fiber network data and the internet. He vowed to move forward with a mindset of cent% achievement in terms of 100% road connectivity in villages. Bureau Report, DD India.
And the PM backed his vision with concrete announcements of big-ticket schemes which can completely transform India. These schemes covered a vast range of national objectives, from tackling nutritional challenges to energy self-reliance, from meeting futuristic infrastructure needs to swift and efficient connectivity. Take a look.
Prime Minister said that India should not limit the occasion of 75 years of Indian independence to just one ceremony, and it must lay the groundwork for new resolutions and move forward with them. He said that the entire journey of the next 25 years marks the Amrit period of creation of a new India. He said that the fulfillment of the resolutions in this period will take India to 100th anniversary of its independence with pride. He also announced that the rice available through every government scheme will be fortified by the year 2024. Prime Minister further said that the goal of Amrit Kal is to ascend to new heights of prosperity for India and its citizens. He said that the goal of Amrit Kal is to create an India where the level of facilities is not dividing the village and the city. He also announced India's most ambitious infrastructure scheme.
100 लाख करोड़ से भी अधिक की योजना लाखों नौजवानों के लिए रोजगार के नए अवसर लेकर के आने वाली है। गति शक्ति हमारे देश के लिए एक ऐसा नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर मास्टर प्लान होगा जो होलिस्टिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की नींव रखेगा।
In a move towards strengthening the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao initiative, Prime Minister announced that the girls will now be able to study in Sainik schools too.
अब सरकार ने तय किया है कि देश के सभी सैनिक स्कूलों को देश की बेटियों के लिए भी खोल दिया जाएगा। देश के सभी सैनिक स्कूलों में अब बेटियां भी पढ़ेगी।
Prime Minister added that India is not energy independent and spends over 12 lakh crores on importing energy. He stressed on the need to ensure that India becomes Atmanirbhar or self-sufficient in energy production also. He further said that India has decided to target 450 gigawatts of energy production through renewable sources by 2030. He also announced a national hydrogen mission on the occasion.
अमृत काल में हमें भारत को ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन के प्रोडक्शन और एक्सपोर्ट का ग्लोबल हब बनाना है। ये ऊर्जा के क्षेत्र में भारत की एक नई प्रगति उसको आत्मनिर्भर बनाएगा और पूरे विश्व में क्लीन एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन की नई प्रेरणा भी बनेगा।
Prime Minister said that Amrit Kal is of 25 years, but Indians don't have to wait that long to achieve the goals. He said that the people have to start now and India does not have a moment to lose. He said that the country also has to change and said that Indians as citizens will have to change themselves too. Bureau Report, DD India.
And that brings up In Focus tonight, PM's vision for New India. That's what we're talking about tonight, and we have two guests with us. Shekhar Iyer is with us, senior journalist, and Deepshikha Sikharwar is also with us, senior editor, Economic Times. Good evening to you both. Shekhar, just in terms of a broad vision, what does it really stand out as Prime Minister's way that he's charted out for the next 25 years? He talks about, well, New India, but a renewed India as well, it seems.
Well, I think the entire speech, if you look at it, it brings new energy new focus and talks of new ways of achieving these goals. Particular interest is, I think, what the Prime Minister called Gati Shakti, not just for infrastructure development, but the Gati Shakti, that is the speed, the energy of speed that has to come for all the schemes and all the projects. The way the Prime Minister put it is, the projects must be taken to the optimum capacity utilization in terms of achieving 100%, whether it comes to poverty removal schemes or infrastructure. I think this is a very, very new approach which the Prime Minister wants to bring. We have seen in the last 6 years where the Prime Minister has been constantly extolling the bureaucracy, the system, the ministers, everyone to do more and more so that we can achieve tangible results.
Certainly. Let me bring in Deepshikha now. Deepshikha, we've seen ever since the Prime Minister came to power in 2014, infrastructure has been one big thrust area. If you talk about building roads, the average has been 40 kilometers per hour, which is per day, which is unprecedented. Now we're talking about Gati Shakti, 100 lakh crore rupees. Where do you think these resources, where do you think they will be directed, and what will be their impact?
When you're talking about the focus on infrastructure in the past few years on the roads and highways, construction and so on and so forth, but you have to see Gati Shakti very differently. Now, most experts, most commentary has spoken about how India, if it has to take that big leap towards, high growth, it needs to do something about its logistics sector, its infrastructure sector. Because if you have to push growth, you have to create that capacity, you have to provide that support to the economy, to the businesses, and so on and so forth. So when Prime Minister announced Gati Shakti, he spoke about two things. A, ease of doing business for the industry, ease of living for people. Yeah. So infrastructure is required not just for people but also for the industry, and it really needs a big leap. What we need is a multimodal infrastructure plan, and which is what I understand from Gati Shakti what it would be like. So you're bringing everything on the table together and not working in silos. Everything has to be integrated. And the infrastructure connectivity has to be done in a very integrated manner. With regard to funding, I think funding is not a constraint. There are a lot of foreign funds which are looking to invest. India is a good market to get good returns. And this 100 lakh crore is not getting invested next 5 years. It's a long-term plan. So obviously it will come. And this is a plan, which was really required to support the economy and to actually push it to a high growth trajectory.
Certainly. And again, in terms of energy self-reliance, if you talk about the National Hydrogen Mission, Shekhar, that is another big ticket announcement that takes off from today, because we're talking about green hydrogen here, not grey, not blue or any other kind.
Absolutely. This is a very, very frontier area of technology where we are just stepping into. A few days ago, there was an announcement about projects that are being done at the pilot levels, pilot scale. Now, what the Prime Minister announced today is a major mission that is looking at the prospect of India being exporter of green hydrogen, that is using hydrogen to produce electricity, and the only byproduct will be water. So, this is absolutely emission-free kind of thing. That is the future way of looking at energy generation. So what the Prime Minister today has announced is intended to put India in that league of nations which are examining new sources of energy and going beyond what is currently the heavy dependence on fossil fuel. Because of India's commitment to clean, for the climate conference in Paris, which some of it has already been implemented, whether it is the rain sector and other production manufacturing sector. So therefore, today's announcement is very significant in terms of India's commitment to the climate conference to combat what we are all be talking about with this recent UN report also, which is warning of dangers ahead.
Certainly. And Deepshika, how feasible do you think this national hydrogen mission is likely to be, considering that green hydrogen has been a challenge world over, to come up with sufficient quantities of it, which is affordable as well, because it is a fairly intense, capital intensive technology that we're talking about. India has a scale perhaps to make it cheaper.
Definitely. If you look at the kind of import bill that we run into, it's over $100 billion a year. And plus, the dependence on other countries for crude. We've seen in the past year, what happened in terms of geopolitics and the oil prices and how they sort of rose and so on. So we really don't have an option here. So we will have to work out the dynamics, and there is a lot of technology available which can make it affordable, especially because India is a large consumption market.
Yes.
So in terms of the size, if we can ensure availability, it would be a feasible plan, especially because we want to cut our dependence not just for, forex, the kind of import bill that we run, but also the kind of dependence that we have on other countries for supply of crude. And of course, hydrogen is a clean fuel, which, Prime Minister has stated multiple times. India is very high on climate goals, on green energy, and so on. So hydrogen is the way forward.
Definitely.
So,
Definitely to meet
I
those
think,
needs of
government
climate.
should be doing its best, to
Yes.
provide a framework for that.
Certainly, and to meet the needs of climate mitigation as well. And Shekhar, in terms of fortifying food grain to meet our nutritional challenges, it's a no-brainer. Starting an e-commerce platform for bringing together produce that is or products that are made by women and other marginalized sections, that is again a no-brainer, but it hadn't been done so far, and now that bullet is being bitten as well.
Absolutely, because when the Prime Minister talks of this Amrit Kal, this is the moment, the way finally ended his speech with that ode to this moment. This is our moment. If we don't seize this moment and do whatever has to be done and whatever it takes to be done, I think we will lose the big opportunity that is before us. That is the Prime Minister's concern, and that is the Prime Minister's drive. So whether it is, Vande Bharat trains, 75 trains in 75 weeks, or whether it is about talking about, the infrastructure, Gati Shakti, or whether it is talking about other things like particularly the piped water scheme, or anything, any aspect of governance that the Prime Minister has in mind. What he means is that it has to be done in a manner which brings out the optimum in each one of us, rather than each individual Indian citizens. That is why, throughout the running theme of his speech is today is, let us not lose even a single moment in achieving these goals, because it has been his constant endeavor. Throughout the last 6 years we have seen, because I remember in all his interviews you gave in the run-up to the Lok Sabha elections of 2019, where the Prime Minister spoke of, the challenges, the kind of challenges that he had envisaged before taking office in 2014, and the problem that he had encountered all through these years has only convinced him that we have everything that that has to be done. But our problem is we are too much bogged down by procedures,
Yes.
by the systemic inefficiencies or whatever problems. So these will have to be overcome. That's why he mentioned about those compliances aspect. When you talk of ease of living, there are so many regulations and there are so many clearances that are required, which he mentioned that we have already done away with a few thousand of those clearances. So
Certainly, which is
the
why when he
idea is to
which is
use
why when he
this
talks
moment,
about
use this moment.
Which is why when he talks about Sabka Prayas, the fact that he also recognizes, acknowledges challenges and the kind of achievements that India has had and the kind of stellar efforts that have been made by peoples of various walks of life, be it our COVID warriors or our Olympic athletes, Deepshika, it is all directed towards taking the nation on a march towards that goal of New India, isn't it?
Definitely. He's laid out this big shift or a big plan, which actually takes India, puts it on a different pedestal altogether. He's laid out the path. We need large scale, massive mega investment in agriculture. We need massive infrastructure creation to support businesses and to support people. These small roads, small infrastructure creation is not going to help. So the focus is on big bang measures which will change the direction of the country, take it to, a totally different level altogether. And, one important point, which I'd like to highlight here, he mentioned that, government needs to be out of the driving seat, which is a very important statement that he is laying down. So while we've drawn up this huge plan, he's also stating that people need to come up, the industry needs to come up, the private sector needs to come up. Government is going to do all what is required in terms of compliances, in terms of making your life easy, providing you with a framework. But ultimately, it is people who have to come forward and take this plan forward, to take India ahead.
Definitely, and we can see that happen as well. We're seeing the industries also now, because of after the second wave, it's trying to find its mojo as well, and we can hope that rapid progress will be made on the path that has been shown by Prime Minister Modi towards, of course, a brilliant 100th year of independence as well, progressing from the 75th that we have celebrated today. Thanks a lot for joining us, Shekhar Iyer and Deepshika Sikarwar. Okay, now skyscrapers and many other iconic buildings glowed in India's colours the world over as well to mark the country's 75th Independence Day. The tricolour was unfurled in India's missions in multiple national capitals as well, and members of the diaspora were also in a mood of jubilation. Take a look.
75th Independence Day was celebrated across the country with enthusiasm and patriotism. Jammu and Kashmir Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha hoisted the tricolour in Srinagar on the occasion of 75th Independence Day. The flag was also hoisted at the Hari Palace in Srinagar, and people celebrated Independence Day. Lieutenant Governor R.K. Mathur hoisted the national flag on the occasion of 75th Independence Day in Leh, Ladakh. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal, Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, Gujarat Chief Minister Vijay Rupani also took part in the 75th Independence Day celebrations. Apart from the celebrations in the country, Independence Day was also celebrated with great enthusiasm in different parts of the world. From France to China and from Cambodia to Seychelles, Indians took part in the celebration. Embassy and High Commission officials and persons of Indian origin took part in the Independence Day celebrations in various places including Dubai. The Indian community in New York Consul celebrated the Independence Day with much fervour and enthusiasm by hosting a cultural program. Indian ambassador to China Vikram Mistry hoisted the tricolour during India's 75th Independence Day celebrations at the Indian Embassy in Beijing. Consul General of India in Munich Mohit Yadav unfurled the Indian flag on 75th Independence Day. Indian Consulate also organised a cycle rally as part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. In Australia, Victoria Bridge was decked up in Brisbane. High Commission of India in Canberra organised a virtual screening of flag hoisting ceremony on the 75th Independence Day of India. The 75th Independence Day of India was celebrated in Bangladesh at the Indian High Commission in Dhaka and Assistant High Commissions at Khulna, Rajshahi, Sylhet and Chattogram. The 75th Independence Day of India was celebrated in different parts of Sri Lanka in strict compliance of COVID-19 protocols. Indian Embassy in capital Thimphu in Bhutan was lit up in the national tricolour. The High Commission of India in Victoria, Seychelles was lit up in the national tricolour of India to celebrate Independence Day. Celebrations of India's 75th Independence Day came from different parts of the world. Here are celebrations from Philippines, Israel and Peru. Independence Day celebrations witnessed in Vietnam and Indonesia as well, where India's installations were all decked up. In Japan, a photo exhibition was held in Sakai City depicting India's immense depth of history, culture and diversity. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, now we're shifting focus to Afghanistan, where the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan is near completion. Taliban insurgents have entered Kabul even as Afghanistan's President, or you can call him former president as well, Ashraf Ghani has left the country. Reuters reports that talks were scheduled in Doha between the government and Taliban representatives for a deal to hand over power, but we don't know what the status on that is right now. Western nations, including US, Australia and Germany, have put in motion plans to evacuate their embassy staff as well.
The Taliban has entered Kabul. Taliban insurgents entered the capital city of Afghanistan, even as United States evacuated diplomats from its embassy. However, both the Afghan government and the Taliban have agreed to meet in Doha to discuss a transition of power in presence of US officials. Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani held a call with national security forces on Sunday, hours before it was reported that he had left the country. According to Reuters, Afghanistan's Tolo news agency reported that Ghani had left the country, and an interior ministry official said that he was headed for Tajikistan. A video released by the presidential palace showed Ghani instructing security officials to maintain safety and establish direct phone lines with communities. It is an obvious necessity to have national security alongside the police and the national forces. I have guided the Defense Ministry to take full responsibility for the security of all residents. It is our responsibility, and it is a responsibility that, God willing, we will take on appropriately. Secondly, those people that are making noise about rioting, looting and killing people, we will deal with them with full force. The statements of ministers of the government give a hint that warring factions are trying to reach some sort of an agreement. Afghanistan's acting defense minister Bismillah Mohammadi sought to reassure residents of Kabul on Sunday that the city is secure. An Afghanistan government delegation, including senior official Abdullah Abdullah, will travel to Qatar to meet with representatives of the Taliban, an Afghanistani negotiator told Reuters. Fauzi Kufi, a member of the Kabul negotiating team, confirmed to Reuters that the delegation would meet with the Taliban in the Gulf state after the militant group earlier entered Kabul. Reuters has said that the Afghan delegation and Taliban representatives would discuss a transition of power, adding that US officials would also be involved. Honorable and faithful people of Kabul, I, as a representative of the security and defense forces of Afghanistan, assure you that Kabul is secure. Your security and defense forces are committed to their promise of defending Kabul. Until there is an agreement in Afghanistan, in Kabul, I assure you that Kabul is secure. Your children, your security forces, everyone is ready to defend Kabul. Just some enemies of Kabul are trying to spread propaganda in order to make people lose confidence. I, as a representative of the Afghan government, of the defense forces of Afghanistan, assure you that until there is an agreement, Kabul will be secure. Stay confident. Earlier, Afghanistan's acting Interior Minister Abdul Sattar Mirzaqwal also said on Sunday that Kabul's security was guaranteed after a deal was agreed between the government and the Taliban.
The security of the city has been guaranteed. There will be no attack on the city. The big city and the power will be handed over to a temporary third party, and it is our duty to secure the city. Don't be victim of their propaganda. Kabul will be safe. Don't worry, there won't be any problems in Kabul.
The collapse of the Afghan government defense has stunned diplomats. Just last week, a US intelligence estimate said that Kabul could hold out for at least 3 months. Earlier on Sunday, the insurgents captured the eastern city of Jalalabad almost without a fight, giving them control of one of the main highways into the landlocked nation. Taliban also took over the nearby Torkham border post with Pakistan, leaving Kabul airport the only way out of Afghanistan that is still in government hands. The capture of Jalalabad followed the Taliban's seizure of northern city of Mazar-e-Sharif late on Saturday, which was also with little fighting. Amid the still developing situation, which remains extremely fluid, many Western nations have put in motion plans to evacuate their embassy staff from Kabul. Germany has said that it wants the employees of the diplomatic mission and German aid organizations as well as local helpers to fly out as quickly as possible. German Air Force plans to fly to Kabul in a military transporter on Monday to pick up German citizens and Afghan local staff. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison also said on Sunday that the situation in Afghanistan was heartbreaking and that his government was working with allies and security partners to protect vulnerable Afghanis. Morrison said that around 400 locally engaged employees had previously been relocated to Australia with their families since April. US President Joe Biden has already authorized deployment of 5,000 troops to help evacuate citizens and ensure an orderly and safe drawdown of US military personnel.
We are focused, and the President's focused first and foremost on the safety and security of our personnel, and so we are moving personnel to the airport, to a facility there. We've been focused all along on making sure that they're safe and secure. The President, as you know, has sent in a significant force to make sure that we can proceed with an orderly move and getting down to a core diplomatic presence in Kabul. And we're working that very, very assiduously right now.
Afghanistan is staring at a huge humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in the Taliban-captured areas and also on the streets of Kabul. UN agencies have already warned of a humanitarian catastrophe in Afghanistan as Taliban have entered the city of Kabul. Thousands of displaced families which have arrived in Kabul are living in open grounds and public parks due to conflicts between government forces and the Taliban militants. Many cities and about half of the country's 34 provinces in recent weeks have seen heavy battles and street fightings. Bureau Report, DD India.
So, Citizen, the scenes are pretty chaotic in Kabul, and even as US President Joe Biden faces international recognition for pulling troops out from Afghanistan, the US has defended the withdrawal. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said that the Biden administration just followed the timeline that was reached by the previous incumbent, which is the Republican regime of Donald Trump.
We inherited a deadline negotiated by the previous administration. That deadline was May 1st. And the idea that we could have maintained the status quo beyond May 1st if the President had decided to stay, I think is a fiction. Here's what is likely to have happened had the President decided to do that. During the time from when the agreement was reached to May 1st, the Taliban had stopped attacking our forces, stopped attacking NATO forces. It had not sought to take over the country, the entire country, by going at these major provincial capitals. Come May 2nd, if the President had decided to stay, all gloves would have been off. We would have been back at war with the Taliban, attacking our forces. The offensive you've seen throughout the country almost certainly would have proceeded. We would have had about 2,500 forces in country with air power. That would not have been sufficient to deal with the situation. And I would be on your show right now explaining why we were sending tens of thousands of forces back into Afghanistan to restart a war that we need to end.
So that's the explanation of the US, that it was a timeline that they inherited from the previous administration, but it has a bearing on the Afghanistan of today, which is in deep crisis, and that is our In Focus tonight. And to talk about it, we have senior diplomat with us, former diplomat Dilip Sinha, and also we have Lieutenant General S.A. Hasnain as well, retired former GOC 15 Army Corps. First to you, General Hasnain, what do you make of the situation now in Kabul as well as in the rest of the country where the Taliban has taken over? Is it very, very tenuous for the people there, because we don't know what the arrangements are right now to ensure that there is no further bloodshed?
Yeah, there's no doubt about it that the next 3 to 4, maybe a week, 3-4 days to a week would be very, very critical in Afghanistan. Because frankly saying, now that President Ashraf Ghani is probably already in Tajikistan with his national security advisor, left behind a lame defense minister to look after whatever there is. The government of Afghanistan is non-existent at the moment. No one is really in control. I think the United States have left it in a very, very awkward way, without seeing this through at all, without anticipating the kind of situation which would develop. You said it yourself just now. They were expecting 90 days more for Kabul to be able to hold on. Obviously, a very faulty intelligence, a very faulty understanding of Afghan culture, the Afghan way of life. In fact, all along the Americans have always been saying it should be an Afghan-led peace, it should be an Afghan-created peace. but somehow they have failed to understand Afghan culture. 350,000 strong Afghan National Army, which they created, equipped, 160 strong aircraft strong Air Force. Somehow they just couldn't get their act together because what they created was only material resources. The training they accorded was not for this situation. The leadership they could not create. These are some of the major reasons for this overall military debacle. And largely most of us have gone wrong in understanding the situation in Afghanistan because we have been applying our own models, the Indian model or the American model or the Australian model of war fighting on the existing situation in Afghanistan. And that's really not the correct way of doing it. Because if the Afghans do it in their own particular way.
Yes, we've seen that happen. We've seen that happen earlier as well. We're seeing that now as well. But Dilip Sinha, what can we expect out of Doha now that the Taliban's already overrun the country in a manner of speaking, and the government, President Ghani's government, is no longer really there? What sort of negotiation can we expect out of Doha in terms of accommodating others? That was the initial premise that one thought would be worked upon.
Well, the Doha drama was really a sideshow. The real action was taking place on ground where the Taliban were marching across the entire country, and now they are marching into Kabul. So what's happening in Doha is really irrelevant to the whole process. The Taliban have won. The Afghan government has surrendered. The president has fled the country. He has betrayed his country. So this is the worst possible scenario that the people of Afghanistan could have imagined.
But can you blame President Ghani at this stage? I mean, knowing by history what we've seen in '96, can you blame him? At least some might say that he'll live to fight another day.
Well, the fact remains that President Ashraf Ghani knew from at least March last year that the Americans were withdrawing. Others felt that perhaps the Americans would not withdraw. But now you have just heard President Biden's spokesman saying that he's putting the entire blame on the predecessor, which really is farcical because President Biden did not need to follow his predecessor's timetable. But in any case, this will be a great blot on his term as president. But that is for President Biden to worry about. What's happened in Afghanistan is, of course, that Ashraf Ghani was not able to prepare his country for this eventuality. He talked big even till 2 days ago, till 1 day ago, but he did not prepare the country for battle, because once you know that the country is facing a war-like situation, then you have to bring in people who can fight a war for you, which he never prepared his country for. He sacked his defense minister just very recently. He changed his army commander. We did not know who the defense minister was. He should have brought in his commandants and his army people in and at least put up a fight. The worst situation has been that the Afghan army has given up without fighting a bullet, without firing a bullet. And that is really a shame. And then on top of it all, Ashraf Ghani has fled the country.
Yes, that is a capitulation that has left the entire world shocked, because in such a situation, then, General Hussain, can we really expect the Taliban to change its ways? Bear in mind the history of what led it to power, how it ruled the country for 5 years, the consequences of that. Do you think this time they might be a little different?
That's a good question. But considering the manner in which events have gone on in the last, let's say about 48 to 96 hours, I don't seem to be believing anyone or anything on what is happening in Afghanistan. The Taliban may say a lot of things. A lot of people may assess that the Taliban of 1996 or 2001 isn't what the Taliban of 2021 is. But obviously the Taliban is also attempting to put up a damn good show to project to the world that they have changed, that they no longer look in the manners in which they used to look earlier. Obviously, they're looking for some kind of an international certification. They want the international community to support them. They have also made an appeal not to evacuate the embassies. They say that none of the embassies should be evacuated because they are not going to come to harm. So obviously, the Taliban is on their best behavior at this particular time. They know financially they're going to have a problem running this country. They will have to depend a lot on Pakistan to an extent. They'll have to depend on the United States for a bailout. So whatever the Taliban says today is not believable, because I don't think the basic ideology and understanding of the Taliban has changed. Why
Okay.
would it? Why would it?
Do you think
that's the big question we should ask. here.
Dilip Sinha, is this a direct consequence of classic doublespeak that the Taliban seems to have picked up from its neighbor?
Well, yes, the Taliban say something and they do something else. We have to look at their actions, not their words. And their actions so far do not give any confidence that their behavior has changed. If you look at even some of their statements, they say that the rights of women will be respected, but rights as within the Sharia, which as they interpret. And their interpretation, as we know, is an extremely conservative and antiquated interpretation of the Sharia. There have been some vengeful killings. The fact that people like Ashraf Ghani have fled the country means that they feared the worst. So they themselves, people who have been negotiating with the Taliban, don't trust them. And there have been interviews now with people in Afghanistan, people of the cabinet, and they are extremely fearful, especially women who have been told to stay indoors, or to go to safe places. Now, what does this mean?
This will be the perspective of the Indian government as well, because it seems that the Taliban right now is saying it appreciates what India has done for the people of Afghanistan, and that people in the Indian embassy should also not be worried like other foreign missions. But that is something very, very hard to take on face value at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, our assistance was in sectors like health and education, parliament. These things have no value or no meaning to the Taliban. So I don't see what contribution we can make to the Taliban regime.
Right. Well, we'll have to leave it there, completely out of time, and we will, of course, keep watching that space, especially all information that is coming out of Kabul, very closely, because it remains very unclear as to how things will shape up for the people there. Let's hope for the best for the moment, but I guess be prepared for the worst as well. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Dilip Sinha, as well as General Hasnain. All right, and that's all we have for the moment in this edition of Newsnight. But before we go, let's get you a quick look at the poem that Prime Minister Modi recited, because it was rousing. It referred to how it's the time to seize the day now. It's all about carpe diem, and that is what we want to leave you with. That is a thought that should endure for years and years to come, till that great 100th Independence Day, and reach those goals that have been aspiring to.
यही समय है, यही समय है, सही समय है, भारत का अनमोल समय है। यही समय है, सही समय है, भारत का अनमोल समय है। असंख्य भुजाओं की शक्ति है, असंख्य भुजाओं की शक्ति है, हर तरफ देश की भक्ति है। असंख्य भुजाओं की शक्ति है, हर तरफ देश की भक्ति है। तुम उठो तिरंगा लहरा दो, तुम उठो तिरंगा लहरा दो, भारत के भाग्य को फहरा दो, भारत के भाग्य को फहरा दो। यही समय है, सही समय है, भारत का अनमोल समय है। कुछ ऐसा नहीं, कुछ ऐसा नहीं जो कर न सको, कुछ ऐसा नहीं जो पा न सको। तुम उड़ जाओ, तुम उड़ जाओ, तुम जुट जाओ, सामर्थ्य को अपने पहचानो, सामर्थ्य को अपने पहचानो, कर्तव्य को अपने सब जानो, कर्तव्य को अपने सब जानो। यही समय है, सही समय है, भारत का अनमोल समय है।